الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا أما بعد فقد قال علي بن الحسين عليهما الصلاة والسلام في رسالة الحقوق وأما حق ذي المعروف عليك فأن تشكره تذكر معروفه وتنشر له المقالة الحسنة وتخلص له الدعاء فيما بينك وبين الله سبحانه فإنك إذا فعلت ذلك كنت قد شكرته سرا وعلانية ثم إن أمكن مكافاته بالفعل كفأته وإلا كنت مرصدا له موطنا نفسك عليها. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. On this Friday, December 4th, I began by reciting this right number 28 from Risalatul Huquq, from the kalam of our fourth Imam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, alayhi salatu wassalam. The right number 28 is the right of the one who treats you kindly. Interesting as to the selection of Imam alayhi salatu wassalam when it came to the treatise on rights. It's unfortunate that it's not a very lengthy book, um, and it's still, yeah, we have not been able to study it and thoroughly understand the words of Imam Masum. So this is an endeavor to, inshallah, continue to highlight more of the treatise on rights by our fourth Imam. In this one special treaty, which you rarely think about, when you're thinking about the rights of people around you and the things around you, and quite obviously how Imam starts off by beginning with the right of Allah, then the right of nafs, and the right of our body parts, rights of our parents, our siblings, our children, and other folks in our lives that are important. And then Imam talks about the rights of those who treat you kindly. This tells you that this person who's treating you kindly doesn't have to be someone who's related to you, not necessarily someone who's even the follower of the same religion as you, belonging to the same background as yours, religiously, culturally, ethnically, and whatever the case may be. So this is how broad the spectrum is for the person who's kind to you. And then Imam says that person who has done kindness to you also deserves to be treated in a certain way. And he has rights, or she has rights upon you. So this is how he starts off. He says, and the right of him who treats you kindly is that you should thank him and acknowledge his kindness. Simple enough. Usually is the case when someone does something out of the ordinary for us. Usually we thank them. And spread the good word around about him. Today, you can look at this concept of how we give reviews, right? Yelp reviews and other apps that you have where you purchase some stuff from, or individual vendors. When someone provides services to you, they ask you what? Give us good reviews. Imam is saying that, and the right for the person who treats you kindly is that you should thank them, and then you should acknowledge their kindness and spread the word and the good word around about that person. That's giving them good reviews, that they were nice to you, they done a phenomenal job, for example, and so therefore you should go ahead and write a good review. This is coming directly out of the kalam of our fourth Imam, said when 14 centuries ago, about the concept which of course is very commonly known to us, that when we ask for some services, now a lot of times these services are paid services. When we arrange, for example, a car ride, a transportation, or food delivery, or any other stuff that you get done in your house, for example, from plumbing to leakage to repairs, whatever the case may be. And if this small business person owner that comes and performs this job, or the online vendors, when you buy something, they request what? They say, well, give us a good feedback. So when you give them a good review, then what does it do? It makes them go up where people will read it, this honest opinion, and they will go ahead and use their services as well. So it's flourishing their business. 14 centuries ago, our fourth Imam taught about this. He said, if anyone has done good to you, has been kind to you, let's say you hired someone to do something, and they went out of their way beyond what they were supposed to do, that which of course was their fee was paid to them. He says they went beyond that way, so you acknowledge their good work, spread the good word around about that person. So that's of course talking about the vendors. I brought in that example, but we're talking about over here more general, when a person does any act of kindness to you, when they do that, spread a good word about that person around. You know, you say, who spreads a good word around? Yes, on the contrary, we do spread bad word around for people. That is done in the form of ghibat. That is done in the form of slandering someone, backbiting someone, right? You hear something about someone and then you go ahead and talk about that thing behind their back. Similarly, Imam is saying, forget that. That is not only haram, but it should not be done. But contrary to that, this is a practice that has to be established. That instead of speaking ill about someone's ill nature, someone who's good, who's done kindness to you, you should go ahead and spread good word about that person and sincerely pray for him between you and God. And that's an extra bonus that you're giving. If you do that, you have thanked him both in private and in public. Then, if you can practically recompense them, for example, if they were, compensation that was due, do recompense them. Otherwise, you should be determined to do so later. Look at how profound. This is a very short paragraph, in Arabic, 3 or 4 sentences, in which Imam al talks about the right of the one who treats you kindly. So, just to recap as to what Imam is saying, Imam Sajjad has clearly outlined the steps to do the following. Number one, you should you should thank this person. You should acknowledge their kindness and spread the good word about them. Number three, you should sincerely pray for them. And number four, you should practically compensate them if you can. If you can't do it now, you should be determined to do it later on. Why? Because goodness and evil are not equal. Quran states that وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ idfa billati hiya ahsan فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Good and evil conduct are not equal. Repel evil with what is best. If you do so, he between whom and you was enmity will then be as though he were a sympathetic friend. That's what the message of Quran is. That's what the message of Islam is. I don't know where have Muslims been taking their instructions about Islam from, where the media has um, painted a very negative picture. Of course, it's our own doing of some of our own people, and as well as some other people who are exploiting these ideas. How come they do not mention this ayat number 34 from chapter 41? Surah Fussilat, ayat number 34, chapter number 41. That good and evil are not equal. Yeah, if you are struck with evil, repel evil with that which is best, which is good. If you do so, he between you and whom that there's enmity existed, it is as if that you were a sympathetic friend. Idfa billati hiya ahsan. That should be the compensation for even the evil that has been done to you. Now, if a good is being done to you, then just nurun ala nur. Then you don't even need to be instructed about that. It's natural that we should do good in response to those who have done good to us. So, of course, you don't need Quran to come and tell you that. In this verse, we read that we should treat those who do some evil to us, we should treat them with kindness as well. This will have a great effect on them and it will attract them to us. Unfortunately, we read this in the biography of Imams. How many? I'm sure countless stories that our kids can tell you. Story of Imam Ali, story of Imam Hassan, story of Imam Hussein, story of Imam Muhammad Baqir, all of whom encountered adawat and enmity from certain individuals. And then later imams who spent some time in prison, how they were able to speak and talk to those who were very evil to them and treated them with kindness, and then the effect that it had upon them. But of course, when someone does good to you, you don't really need Quran to come and tell you that you should be kind to them. But it still does, because sometimes we are lacking in that as well. We just can't get the thank you out of our tongues. Response to courteous greetings. See, to the extent, forget about some physical favor someone has done to you, lending you money, giving you some space, providing something for you, doing some services for you, making life easy for you. Forget about those things. The simple act of greeting. Surah Nisa, chapter 4, verse 86. وَإِذَا حُيِّيتُمْ بِتَحِيَّةٍ فَحَيُّوا بِأَحْسَنِ مِنْهَا أَوْ رُدُّوهَا إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَسِيبًا. When you are greeted with a salute, greet with a better one than that. Someone says Salamun Alaikum, greet them in a better way or return it. Indeed, Allah takes account of all things. So someone says Salamun Alaikum, response should be Alaikum Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Then not only peace and greetings be upon you as well, but the mercy of Allah upon you and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon you. Make a dua for that person. May Allah give you this, may Allah give you that. So that's when someone salutes you, let alone when someone gives you a hadiah or a gift. So greeting each other in any form is the most basic way of expressing kindness to one another. When a stranger greets you, walking around somewhere in the parking lot, in a, for example, at your workplace or at a mall somewhere, this is showing courtesy that they greeted you. And this is one of the good things about the country that we live in. However, we can also find in the tradition that practical forms of expressing kindness are also part of the concept of greeting. So sometimes practically you can greet someone or receive the compensation for the greeting. In Ali ibn Ibrahim's commentary of Quran, we read the following tradition quoted on the authority of our fifth Imam and as well as our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar al-Sadiq والسلام, and Imam Muhammad Baqir والسلام, which is meant by a greeting is what is meant by a greeting is the verbal expression of greetings and any other practical forms of expressing kindness. So any way that you can respond, which would be understood as kindness. Sometimes a child does something at home for their grandparents. Now, they don't have to do anything because the child should be doing this. Let's say, a grandfather or grandmother asks a child, their grandchildren, can you get me a glass of water, for example? The child brings a glass of water. No, that's not a difficult task. You grab a glass of water, you grab a cup, you get some water from the tap, and you bring it to them. And they say, well, thank you, beta, thank you very much, and so on and so forth. But on top of that, they go ahead and give a candy as well, especially if a candy is something which the child likes. So this is a practical way of expressing kindness. Another tradition in Manaqib, a slave brought a flower to Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. Now this was an act of kindness that she brought this flower to Imam. Imam returned her favor by freeing her from the bonds of slavery. Now, might be some questions as to why Imam had a slave to begin with. It was the norm in that society that people had slaves. But when Masumin came in order to abolish the concept of slavery, they purchased the slaves and then they released them. Because if they are still, because that was the norm of the society, that just like there's so many things that are norm of the society that we live in, which as much as we would like to change, we can't, but we can make an effort. So this was the way Imams made an impact. They would go ahead and purchase and buy these slaves from these cruel owners, bring them into their own custody, train them for a little bit. So not just go ahead and free them right away. So when they were training them, they still served as the slaves for them. And then whenever the opportunity would come, they would go ahead and free them when they were ready to go. And that practice was also introduced to Muslims as well. That whenever after a war or something, there would be these captives of war. You could either release them. Well, if they're captives of war, they might revolt against you, cause disruption in your society, because now they are in an enemy's area. You didn't have any solitary confinements to go ahead and keep these people there. So instead, Rasulullah would give the war captives to the Muslimin, the Mujahideen, the warriors, these people who had taken part in the battle. Here, this is a compensation for you. Use this person, his skills, and they will serve you. And while they're serving you, maybe they serve you because they're maybe more knowledgeable than you. They may have some skill that you don't have. So maybe you can learn from them, and they will be doing this for you while you are providing for their basic needs, which is food and shelter. And then as soon as you commit some sort of, there's an action where there's a kafara, go ahead and free the slave. So that's how Islam gradually and slowly abolished it. So Imam Hassan, والسلام, when that slave maid, she brought a flower to him, Imam returned the favor by freeing her from the bonds of slavery. When asked why he did this, this was considered such a big act at that time. Imagine having a slave and then you go ahead and get rid of and free them. Freeing someone from the bounty or the bond of slavery, it was a big act of generosity. Imam recited this famous ayat. And when you are greeted with a greeting, greet with a better greeting than the one that you were given. He then added, freeing her was more courteous greeting. Thus, we can see that offering a more courteous greeting is a general decree that includes both verbal and physical form of greetings. Good, the reward of the good. Quran says in Surah Rahman, "Hal jaza'ul ihsani illa al-ihsanu." Is the requital of goodness anything but goodness? As I said before, nobody, even Quran does not need to come and tell you that when someone is good to you, you should be good to them in return. But unfortunately, some people did not know that. And unfortunately, some people still do not know that. So Quran has to reiterate this point over and over again. That is the requital of goodness, anything but goodness. Do you think there's any other way that you can respond to goodness? In many of the commentaries of Quran, the good mentioned here in this verse has been interpreted as the unity of God. When it says the word ihsan in this ayah, al jaza'ul ihsan illa al ihsan, that's why sometimes the tafsir is very, very, vital for the understanding of Quran. If I just recited the translation for you, is the requital of goodness anything but goodness? You would treat the word ihsan as goodness, which is fine because that's the literal meaning of the word. But when you dig deeper and look into the tafsir, you find that this word, how Ma'sumin explained this word. So again, from our sixth Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he was asked, Ayatun fi kitabillahi musjalatun qult ma hiya? قال قول الله عز وجل هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان جرت في الكافر والمؤمن والبر والفاجر ومن صنع إليه معروف فعليه أن يكافئ به وليس المكافأة أن تصنع كما صنع حتى يربي فإن صنعت كما صنع كان له الفضل بالابتداء. Imam Sadiq responded, it is Almighty God's words. Is there any reward for good other than good? This holds true for believers, pagans, good doers, and evildoers. You must reward good for good. Whoever has done some good should respond with good. The proper compensation is not to respond with as much good as that person did, but rather more. Since if you respond equally, that person who initiated is better than you because he initiated it or she initiated it. They were the first ones to go ahead and greet you. Now, if you greeted in the same way, if their reward was balanced, they would be, if they were equal in rewards, then the first person who initiated the good act would be superior because he or she had the liberty to start something good. You just responded to it. That's why it's very, uh, um, you know, ironic if you look at it, that all of us know Saying Salamun Alaikum to anyone is mustahab, right? You don't. It's not wajib to do salam. But what is wajib? The reply is wajib. Even the children know that. So if I'm walking around, if I say Salamun Alaikum, it's mustahab to say Salamun Alaikum. But everyone who hears this, or if there's a person particular that I said this to, it becomes obligatory upon them to say Alaikum Assalam, or however they want to respond back to me. Salamun Alaikum, Salamun Alaikum, Alaikum Assalam, wa Alaikum Assalam, wa Rahmatullah, wa Barakatuh, everything. All of these are wajib. He says that the act which is mustahab would here be superior to the act which is wajib. Hold on a second. So you have a mustahab and you have a wajib. Is it possible for mustahab to be higher than wajib? Well, in this case, it is. Look at it. Let's say someone comes in and says, Salamun Alaikum. And then while I was praying, I'm supposed to respond in the same way. I said, Salamun Alaikum. If I was the only recipient of this salam. Or if I wasn't praying, I was just sitting, the person walked in and he said, Salamun Alaikum. And I said, Alaikum Assalam. Now we both said the same amount. But whose act is superior? The one who initiated it. Because we responded in the same way. But his act is superior because he initiated and I responded in the same exact way. My response is wajib. His initiation was mustahab. But here mustahab has higher worth than the wajib. I hope that makes sense. So in Mufradat Raghib said doing good is loftier than doing justice. Because in the case of doing justice, you give and take as much as you are supposed to. Right? That's what justice is. You give and take as much as you're supposed to do. But in doing good, you always give more than, you are due to give, and take less than what you deserve to get. That's what you do when you're being kind to someone. You give them more and you keep a little portion for yourself. So the response of God's favor. He says, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. And do not neglect your portion of this world, and do good to others as Allah has done good to you. Tell us this, that these are all my creations. Don't think about it that should I be nice to this person or not? Should I help this person or not? Islam is not limited only for those who are Muslims. Here, your neighbors have rights. Imam, when he's mentioning these in this Risalatul Huquq, he talks about a group of people who could well be outside of the realm of Islam. Just right here, this person who's been kind to you, he may be outside of the realm of Islam, but still your responsibility as a human being is first, that you should go ahead and compensate. And therefore, when it comes to voluntarily helping someone, when someone is struggling, a lot of people ask this question, can we help non-Muslim friends, neighbors? Yes, nothing wrong with it. Even with your sadaqat, you can help, as long as there's there's a possibility that, of course, there will not be any hostile toward Islam and the religion of Islam, and they don't show hostility toward Ahlul Bayt. That's probably is the case, that they don't show any hostility. When you know that for sure, then there's nothing wrong with it. If anyone we're supposed to, even in certain situations, even those people, those who are your enemies, you're supposed to help them out. Give them if they ask you for, because the traditions of Prophet are very clear about it. But if someone is holding hostility toward your religion, your Ahl Bayt, your family members, then of course you close your doors to them, because you don't want that hostility coming inside. But still then, if you were to help them, it would be an act which is beyond the stature of mankind. And Islam encourages that. He says, let them forgive and overlook. And you do not wish that God should forgive you. If you don't want Allah to forgive you, then don't forgive them. But if you want Allah to forgive you, then you should go ahead and also forgive other people. So Imam ﷺ, in this very beautiful khutbah or the treaty on rights talks about um, how to treat someone who has treated you kindly. Imam used the word dhil ma'ruf, and those who have done kindness to you, an act of kindness to you. I'll conclude that we read in a tradition from Ibn Abbas that on the resurrection day, people who do good will enter the court. Their sins will be forgiven due to their good deeds. All their good deeds will remain on their record. Good marks are given to those people whose records shows that their good deeds are more than their bad. So the weighing scale, good was heavier. They will thus be forgiven because of that. The fact that their goods were more than their evils, for example. They will enter heaven. Therefore, doing good to the people will unite all in this world and as well as in the hereafter. This is the reward of the one who does good. So, therefore, it is encouraged that a small act of goodness that you receive from anyone, male or female, Muslim or non-Muslim, mu'min or ghayr mu'min, doesn't matter. You should respond always with a better greeting or with a better compensation than what you had received. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq on this Friday to spread good around us, help people regardless of their faith, creed, background, ethnicity, religiosity, and whatnot. Let's break these um, shackles and not bound ourselves within these boundaries. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam, make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Inshallah, towards the end, we will recite 5 times Amin Yuji for all of those people who are suffering, struggling, battling different diseases, coronavirus or otherwise. There were a few main names that were mentioned before. We continue to pray for Dr. Pervez Hamdani as well. Brother Ali Raza, I received the name of brother by the name Brother Ali Raza, and as well as other people in the community who might be in need of dua. Let's recite this dua from Surah An-Naml together 5 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu yakshifu as-su. 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 أمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض أإله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. Also remember people who have lost their lives, those who are no longer with us, marhamin of all of us. Let's recite the Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawm al-Din. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Have a blessed Friday.